Since 2018, the DJI Mavic 2 Pro has been the workhorse in the foldable drone arena. But I'm here to tell you that today, everything changes with the Mavic 3. So DJI just announced the Mavic 3. And while the DJI Mavic 2 Pro is still a fantastic drone, the Mavic 3 is a big step up from that and promises to be the new gold standard in foldable camera drones. So first of all, the Mavic 3 comes in two variations, and they're both actually the very same drone with one difference. The Mavic 3 is just like this and uses a micro SD card right here in the back to record to just like you did on other drones, and has 8 gigs of internal memory. The Mavic 3 Cine has an internal SSD drive that records up to 1 terabyte of ProRes video for a whole other level of filmmaking and very fast transfers with very big files. This is just the regular old Mavic 3, and it uses a micro SD card just like the Mavic 2 did. So let's take a minute to talk about the biggest differences. If you already own a Mavic 2, you know it's a great camera drone, and you might be wondering, just like the yearly or every other year cycle of phones, is this worth upgrading? And that's part of the point of this video, is to tell you all the things that this does differently than this and why you might consider upgrading. First of all, I want to talk to you about the similarities. Now, what I call these are small improvements. Almost every one of these similarities is an improvement over the other one, but not a huge improvement. And we can start with the similar look of the two. So in terms of size, the Mavic 3 is a little bit bigger, but not too much. It's actually just a little bit taller and has a longer wingspan, meaning the center to center on the motors is longer than the center to center on the motor on this. Not hugely different though. But believe it or not, despite its bigger size, the Mavic 3 is slightly lighter than the Mavic 2. The Mavic 3 comes in at 900 grams-ish, ready to go with a battery, and this one comes in at about 907 with a battery. So by itself, that's not a huge difference, but considering that this is actually a little bit bigger drone and has a longer flight time, it's a pretty considerable thing that they made it bigger and lighter at the same time. Another small improvement is speed when you're flying in sport mode. The Mavic 3 can go 21 meters per second, which is about 47 miles per hour in sport mode, whereas the Mavic 2 could go 20 meters per second, which is about 45 miles per hour in sport mode. And then of course the other similarity is they both have 8 gigs of onboard storage. So if you don't have the version with the SSD drive, or you don't have a big card, or you filled up your card and you need that extra little bit of storage, that's what it's designed for. I kind of wish DJI had upped the ante and put 16 or 32 gigs into the new drone, but they both have 8 gigs of onboard storage, so that's another similarity, no improvement there. Now let's talk about the differences between the two and where you really are going to notice the improvements in the Mavic 3 over the Mavic 2. The first one for me is flight time. The Mavic 3 has up to 46 minutes of forward motion flight time and 40 minutes of hovering flight time. Now that's in ideal conditions with no wind, and the reason it actually has a longer flight time going forward is because going forward it actually creates a little bit of lift versus just hovering where it's not getting that lift from airflow. The Mavic 2 was less, with 29 minutes of hovering flight time and 40 minutes of forward flight time. You probably won't get that, again, ideal conditions with a brand new battery, no wind, and flying at just the appropriate speed, but the gain is significant in terms of percentage of how much time you can fly with this one versus this one. Another really big improvement that you're going to notice when you're flying is OcuSync 3 or O3 in the Mavic 3. So O3 is what they're calling OcuSync 3. It's the improved version of OcuSync 2, which was on the Mavic 2. O3 gives you longer transmission, better transmission in interference areas where you have a lot of Wi-Fi and stuff like that going on. You're not going to have as much interference. And the transmission for the remote control or your phone that you're using with the Mavic 3 actually allows you to view in real time 60 frames per second, which is an improvement because a lot of people like to shoot in 60 frames. So as soon as you bump the frame rate on the Mavic 3 up to 60 or faster, even 120 frames per second, you're going to be able to see the live transmission at 60p, 60 frames per second, which is going to give you a sharper, clearer, true representation of what you're actually filming. Another thing to consider that has improved greatly is the return to home feature on the Mavic 3. Now, return to home on the Mavic 2 was very good. Of course, with GPS, they can both lock in, although the GPS system is a little bit improved on the Mavic 3. but really what you're getting again are those algorithms that are telling the drone which direction to fly and what path to take to be most efficient for the battery life it has left. So if you have to hit return to home and the battery's low, you want to make sure it's going to get back to you before the battery runs out, and also it's not going to hit anything along the way. The Mavic 3 gives you a lot more peace of mind to know that it's actually going to use the intelligence, the sensors, and the 3D mapping that it does, because it can see 200 meters ahead of itself while it is flying on a return to home mission. This one was set for 20 meters, so basically 10 times the range in terms of how it's flying as it comes back to you and return to home, which is great for peace of mind. When I first started flying DJI drones, I didn't really use the return to home that often. I felt like it was kind of cheating, but I've realized it's so reliable and so convenient that it is something you can do if you're trying to get the drone back to you quickly and land it safely. Return to home is a great option, and one that is greatly improved on this one. Of course, the biggest difference between this Mavic 3 and the Mavic 2 is the dual camera setup. And with this dual camera comes all kinds of cool stuff. This camera system and sensor system is completely unique in the drone world because it actually has two different sensors. It has a 4/3 sensor in the main camera, and then it has a 1/2-inch sensor in the zoom camera or the tele camera. It allows you to zoom in 28 times in Explorer mode. I could see where this could be very useful for somebody doing inspections and having to look at something like the side of a water tower, for example, and figure out what's going on, if there's a leak or anything like that. It's crazy how close it gets in with this 28x zoom in Explorer mode, both in video and in photos. Now, you would think that when the thing was moving around in 28x zoom in the wind or something like that, it wouldn't be very steady, but that's not the case at all. It actually, even in a little bit of wind, holds it really, really well when zoomed in that far. So something to consider if you're doing something with wildlife or with inspections, that zoom capability in Explorer mode is pretty amazing. Now again, with the Cine version, you can shoot an Apple ProRes HQ, and it has an onboard 1 terabyte SSD drive that it writes to. This is not the Cine version, so for me, I'm going to be shooting in H.264 or H.265, and you can do 5K in both H.264 and H.265 at up to 50 frames per second, and you can do up to 120 frames per second in 4K. So the max bitrate on this thing is 200 megabits per second in H.264, and if you go with H.265, it'll go up to 140 megabits per second. Just for comparison, the max on the Mavic 2 was 100 megabits per second. So you can capture more data, but just remember, if you're going to use the H.265 compression, you're going to need a really beefy computer to make that work. Now, as I said, there's a second sensor in this thing that's a 1/2-inch sensor. That one has a fixed aperture of f4.4 and the equivalent of 162 millimeters when it's zoomed in. So that's a pretty long zoom lens, and again, that's how you can get those really impressive zooms from out wide all the way into 28x and see things really up close. Really, really great if you're doing something with inspections or trying to do something with wildlife and don't want to get too close to them. Now keep in mind that it does switch over when you get into 28x to digital zoom. It's not optical all the way up to 28x. So you are going to see a little bit of artifacting as you get into those higher zoom rates. So keep that in mind, but it is convenient to have them, especially if you're trying to find something or locate something or see a detail that you couldn't see with just the optical zoom. So that's kind of an overview of why the camera is a big improvement over the original Mavic 2 camera, even the Mavic 2 Pro. I could go into a lot more detail and probably will in another video about the cameras, but just keep in mind that this camera with the dual lenses and the dual sensors gives you a lot of versatility and just amazing pictures right out of the box. So a couple of other things that you might be familiar with. The Mavic 3 uses the same remote control that DJI has been putting out for the Air 2S and the Mini. This remote control is kind of the new standard form factor, and it feels great. I mean, everybody agrees this feels more like a traditional RC airplane or RC remote control with nice grips, And I believe they made strides on improving the antenna based on the fact that you use this folding piece to put your phone in it, and this piece actually acts as an antenna as well. So you're getting greater range, more battery life, a lot of things out of this, and of course the ability to store the sticks in the bottom of it is really nice, because then you can throw it in, it's nice and flat and fits into your bag. So if you're already used to this remote, you're gonna love it. And if you haven't used this remote before, it is, in my opinion, a big step up from what came with the original Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom. So there are a series of things about the Mavic 3 that I really like, just little touches that DJI has done that I feel like have taken this drone to the next level and evolved it beyond what they've put out in the past. One of them is actually, as silly as it sounds, this harness right here. Now, as you know, DJI has traditionally had a gimbal guard, and they've had different variations on the gimbal guard. They've had some that cover the camera, some that just kind of fit in, but these things have always been a bit of a challenge to put on. So this is the Mavic 2, of course, and this is the gimbal guard that came with it, and it protects the camera, and you just have to kind of figure out how to get it on there. And I've done this a few times, so I'm not too bad at it. And it clips on and keeps the camera protected. The biggest thing with this is, while it's on there, it's easy to forget that it's on there. Turn this thing on, have it boot up, and have your gimbal overloaded, like trying to turn and do all its calibration. I've always hated that about it, because I have more than one time started the drone without pulling the gimbal guard off first. Second of all, it's kind of hard to get the thing on. And then third of all, when you fold the Mavic 2 down with the gimbal guard on, yes, the gimbal's protected, but you still have this issue where the props can flop around. So if you're trying to stuff this into a bag, your propellers can kind of get bent and pushed around in ways that aren't good for them at all. So DJI has addressed that by creating this harness. And what this harness does, it not only protects the camera and the gimbal, it also protects the propellers and the body of the drone. It's brilliant. And best of all, you won't forget this is on there because you have to remove it in order to unfold the drone. So it just kind of slips on like this, covers the sensors in the front, covers the camera, covers the motors here on the bottom, and then it wraps around like this and clips on like that. It's kind of a bungee thing. But what's super cool about it is there's some little tabs here under these propellers that keep the propellers from popping out. They hold the propellers in this slot. So basically these props aren't going to prop out. So when you aren't going to pop out, not prop out. So you have protection for the props, you have protection for the camera, you have protection for the gimbal, you have protection for the front sensors, you have protection from some of the body so it doesn't get scratched up. And there's no way you're going to forget this thing is on there because it's very obviously on there. You can't unfold it until you've taken it off. So no more unfolding your drone, turning it on, and then getting the gimbal overload error telling you, oops, you forgot to take the gimbal off. Way to go, DJI. I love this thing. Another thing I really like about it is the Multicharger is much easier to put the batteries on than the Multicharger for the Mavic 2. On the Mavic 2, you had to kind of slide them in sideways, and they were standing up, and there was kind of this awkwardness to putting them on. It took two hands to do it. With the Multicharger on the Mavic 3, they're just downward slots. You line up the pins, drop it in, and you're good to go. So I like that improvement. Also, the Mavic 3 Multicharger is USB driven, so you can use any charger you want as long as it's compatible with USB-C. So you put your USB-C cable into the Multicharger, you put your USB-A cable into a wall port, into any USB charger that you have that fits into the wall. Doesn't matter what country you're in, doesn't matter what the voltage is, it's just gonna work and charge. Now DJI does include a 65-watt charger that will charge this thing more quickly than using most wall USB plugs. But if you're in a pinch, you can just plug it straight into any USB plug, plug the USB-C into the Multicharger, or directly into the drone and it will charge it. They've gone USB-C on both the remote and the drone, so both of those things are going to be universally easier because USB-C is kind of the standard for now and will be, I think, for a long time. Another thing DJI has done that I really appreciate is they've upgraded their propellers. Now, they look very similar to the old propellers. Of course, they're using this new orange color on them, which is kind of their new signature introduced on the Air 2S, I believe, or maybe it was the Mini 2. But I like the orange tips as opposed to the gray tips. but the propellers have actually been improved for lower sound and more soft material used on the cutting edge of these, which means they don't cut the air quite as sharply, so it helps with the noise, and they also are a little bit safer because it's softer material and a little more pliable. So if you do happen to get your finger caught into it or hit something with it, it's less likely to do damage than the old stiffer props were. So I like that about them. Also, gotta say props, you get it, to the backpack or the bag that it comes in. If you get the Fly More combo, which I definitely recommend because you get the extra things like the extra batteries and some other accessories, it includes a really nice canvas bag that is well made with metal clasps, converts from a shoulder bag into a backpack, has room for a laptop to go into it, plenty of room for everything with the quad. Very nondescript, kind of neutral in its gray color, same color as the shirt actually. And I really like it a lot. I think it's a high quality bag, so you don't have to worry about buying an aftermarket bag. Now, if you want a hard case for it, that's gonna be another story. But for being able to transport it as a backpack or as a shoulder bag, I love the bag. That's another great thing about the Fly More combo with the Mavic 3. And then, as I said before, you can plug a USB-C cable directly into the drone and charge the battery that way. So if you don't have a charger with you and you need to just charge it up directly, you can plug a USB-C cable right into the drone. It'll charge the battery. Or if you had 4 batteries, you could use 3 in the Multicharger and then use 1 straight into the drone and charge 4 simultaneously. Now the Multicharger does them in sequence. It doesn't do them all at once. But let's say you needed to have 4 batteries charged by the next day. You could put 1 into here, let it charge overnight, and let the other 3 go in sequence overnight. And the next day you'd have 4 batteries instead of just 3. Now there's a couple of things about the Mavic 3 that I'm not a huge fan of, and they're pretty small, but I just wanted to mention them in fairness. Number one, I really wish they had upgraded the internal storage from 8 gigs to at least 16 and ideally 32. And then the second thing is a little bit bigger gripe. It's not been an issue for me yet, but the battery compartment doesn't have quite the ease of use that the battery compartment had on this. This was sitting on the top, so gravity was kind of helping you out. When you put this battery in, first of all, you have to really give it a nice firm push to get it in there. And then it doesn't really have that satisfying click that you're used to, that I'm used to with other drones as far as having it in there. Is it gonna come out during flight? I don't think so. It hasn't yet, and I've flown this thing quite a bit so far. But I have actually put it in and it, I guess, wasn't fully latched on both sides and gotten an error. So I don't know if there's something DJI can do about the latching system to make it just a little bit more robust and maybe just make that, see, that's not much of a sound. Whereas with this one, let me just compare the two. Now you're just hearing this through my mic that I'm wearing, but with this one, when you put it on and push it down, see, you hear that sound? With this one, it's not even about the sound, it's just about it feeling like it's gone in there securely. That, like I said, I haven't really had any problems in the air. I did have a couple of times where I didn't have the battery all the way in and the software alerted me to that, so I was able to seat it better. But really, I just feel like you really want to have that strong, satisfying click and know that that battery is all the way in before you turn the thing on or try to take off. So that's it. That's what I think. Should you upgrade from the Mavic 2 Pro to the Mavic 3? Kind of depends on what you're doing. The Mavic 2 Pro is still a great drone and still very viable, and I think it will be for a long time. It's been around so long that I think you can get it repaired, you can get spare parts for it. That's going to be available for quite some time before they kind of quit supporting it altogether, or you can't find them aftermarket. But if you're looking for 5K video, if you're looking for 120 frames per second, if you're looking for this dual camera with this amazing zoom built into it, and kind of the next generation flagship foldable drone, the Mavic 3 is definitely worth checking out. Love to hear your comments below. Share your thoughts and opinions about the Mavic 3 below. I'll try to get back to as many comments as I can. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Ready, Set, Drone.